Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to episode 15 of the Royal Bee Yarn Company's vlog. This is my wife, Kelly Corton, owner of the Royal Bee Yarn Company, which is a website, but mainly a brick and mortar store.
And this is Tony Corton, who is a teacher at Sunset Ridge and also owns the Royal Bee Yarn Company. And you've just really surprised me.
I own all this. This is mine.
You've just surprised me because that was like such a professional introduction.
And you're ruining it. You're ruining it. Keep going.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, it's Sunday. We've had lots of coffee today and we're really on top. So now here's our show. What are you going to show, babe?
I'm going to show.
We also have our own yarn brand.
Yes, we do. And this one's, okay, so this is our first base, about 1.5 years old. And
I love that. This is such a soft yarn.
It is a really soft yarn. It's 18 micron merino fleece from a little farm, custom milled for us, hand dyed in vegetable dyes. But of course that one is not dyed. It's the
like
sheep.
Naked.
It's naked.
That's sheep flavored.
And then with the new woolen spun, I was getting more made, and I was like, a bunch of people were like, why haven't you done the natural color in your woolen spun? So with this latest batch, I just got some of the yarns in. We now have naked woolen spun.
So that's the naked woolen spun, and that's the naked
worsted spun.
Worsted spun. Thank you. This one's like a softer kind of haze to it. This one's got a nice. What I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's okay.
I own a yarn shop, but I don't know what to do with the product.
You do plenty of things around the yarn shop.
I do. I like the behind the scenes guy. You know, I put up the shelves and vacuum, and I take out the trash.
Yeah.
Make Kelly a coffee. Yeah. Watch the shop when she needs to take a bio break. But if you ask me any yarn advice, I will direct you to Kelly or any other customer in the shop at the time.
But one day it's going to happen. I think it's just going to happen because
it needs to, because I'm really jealous of people who can knit and crochet.
Knit and yarn?
Yeah. Maybe I'll be good at shearing, which is kind of coincidental because today's guest.
Oh my gosh, you are so slick today. It's killing me.
We have a real live sheep shearer on the show.
Stephany. She's a lady sheep shearer. She's an incredible person and super interesting.
She's written a book, which Kelly read almost cover to cover in like one sitting.
It's totally fascinating if you're into that kind of stuff.
I'm gonna wait for the film to come out.
It's so well, so well written. Yeah. And Stephany is so lovely and down to earth and amazing.
Very low today.
And Raw Material is the name of her book. She's also the president of the North American Fiber Shed Collective.
Should I get the book?
And the book's at home. I know I should have brought the book to show, but I think I should.
We show it during the interview. We will show it during the interview. It'll magically appear.
It magically appears.
So that's today. I'm very excited.
Well, I mean, you know, technically we interviewed her last week, but I'm spoiling all the magic. I'm just a magic spoiler. And what's so cool about, we don't talk about the Fiber Shed a huge amount in the interview, but I am a proud member now of the Fiber Shed Cooperative.
That's a big deal.
I'm so thrilled. Now, technically, my products, well, not just technically, my products are not available in the marketplace because we source the fibers from North Carolina because it gets milled. One mill's in Virginia, one mill's near I don't tell anybody where this one's milled. And what are you doing?
Nothing.
And so, and everything needs to be contained within Northern California. Yeah. But I do have goods in the shop that qualify me in order to be able to be a Fiber Shed member. And of course, I come up with all my recipes for my various dyes, utilizing plants predominantly native to this area and from my own little kind of what I call like a kitchen garden. So I'm allowed in because of that, because they have really strict kind of guidelines. But outside of being a member, it's really interesting to just look into the whole like fiber shed movement, how it came about, trying to live your life within a fairly contained geographical location. From a consumerism point of view, you can choose, it's kind of like the slow food movement, it's but with regard to fibers, but really it's about promoting, maintaining, and growing our kind of Northern California agriculture. So I've probably bored everybody to tears. Anyway,
what's been going on with you?
Oh yeah, we forgot to do that. What's been going on with you?
Well, I've been, school started in Pacifica, and
oh my gosh.
We have hired a bunch of new exciting teachers, but they've got to be processed, fingerprinted and stuff like that. So in the meantime, I'm kind of covering a kindergarten class, which I've never taught kindergarten. So oh my goodness, they're so cute.
You know what has really impressed me?
What's impressed you?
Is the virtual classroom that you made.
Yeah, well, a lot of teachers are doing that, making virtual classrooms. I'm sure if you've got kids, your teacher will be using a Google Slides. I'm promoting Google, but it's just amazing. I love Google Slides, making virtual classrooms. And even though I'm only covering this class for a couple of weeks, I'm going at it full pelt. I'm making resources and class lists, and I'm really into it. Kind of missed being in the classroom a little bit. But anyway, Kelly, what have you been doing? Yarn stuff.
Lots of yarn stuff. I mean, it's been a difficult week from a construction point of view.
Yes.
Because they've had, you know, we still have the blue tint. The strip mall is being remodeled. It's actually starting to look kind of cute. So
we're still open. Yeah, it's starting to look good.
Still open.
They even made us take down our sign temporarily. So I made a very high-tech sign, which is so good, it might be kept as the actual sign on 5 pieces of A4 paper. Yeah. It's really taped together. So, but also we're suffering a little bit because of the fires in Santa Cruz County and in Sonoma.
Dust blowing in from construction, which of course you've got to be on top of. I can't allow it to get on the yarn, etc.
It's kind of staying.
I know it's been pretty good, but still we're fighting it. And then coupled with we're in the middle of all of the fire activity.
Pandemic.
So yeah.
But we will, our positive, cheery attitude will get you through this. We will get through this. We will get through this.
So if you're not in California, we've had a bunch of lightning storms, and we're not in imminent danger right now.
No.
There's another firestorm, or I mean lightning storm coming tonight. But our neighbors, Half Moon Bay, are the evacuation center, and we're kind of surrounded on the left and the right. So
and we have friends who have property up in Napa and Sonoma and all. Anyway, should we?
Yeah, so it's smoky. So if we cough, then you know it's because the
not
air
sick,
quality is poor.
It's not, allegedly it's not bad today. So
that's good.
Anyway, let's go on to our interview. Let's meet a real lady sheep shearer.
Lady sheep shearer. Makes me really want to get my hands dirty. Oh, sorry. Okay. Hi, Stephany. Hi. Stephany has written Raw Material, which is an awesome book, and she is also Lady Sheep Shearer. So she's totally fat. You're looking very glamorous today, by the way.
Thank you. I had to, find my makeup because it's been sheep shearing season, then pandemic, and I'm like, where is my lipstick even?
Me too. Don't worry about it.
I'm just kind of fascinated about your whole journey because, well, in part we share a lot of things in common. I'm from the tech industry. I was tech publishing. So I was publishing video games and technology publications and also working in e-commerce, and left that for my yarn shop. We're both, well, and, you know, and I'm making, well, I'm not making it, the sheep are making it, the mill are making it, but I'm also doing 100% made here yarn with natural dyes. And I met you because you came into the shop. I don't know, was it like a year and a half ago? It was like just when I launched my yarn.
Somewhere around then. And I travel past your shop all the time, up shearing Half Moon Bay, down on the coast. And I'm like, what's that yarn shop?
So I would love for you to share your kind of journey to becoming a sheep shearer, even though the fascinating tale is also, this is such, can I just say, like, before we get started, I know I'm talking too much, it's because I'm overexcited. Okay, so I was in the publishing industry from 1991 to 2014, and I was a publisher for the vast majority of those years. This is exceptionally well written, exceptionally well written. You are more than a sheep shearer. You are a phenomenal author. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Writing is so much harder than shearing.
So I want to hear your journey.
Well, it was accidental, like the best things are, I think. I mentioned it in the book that the first question was years before I started becoming a shearer. So I was in a yarn shop much like yours, except not, because at the time it was 2007. And I said, where's your local yarn? Because if you're like me, if you're from the Midwest, you don't know a lot about the West, but you know that's where like all the sheep and cattle are. So when I was growing up, all you picture about basically west of the Mississippi are these landscapes with these sheep and cattle roaming all over and not much else in your narrow child kind of mind. And so I was like, where's your local yarn? And they're like, what do you mean? We think we have one yarn that was made in the US. And that, you know, was shocking to me. And that never really left me, you know, that I think because I'm from a very blue collar manufacturing family, I am totally obsessed, probably to the point of, you know, a little too much, with exactly how things are made, you know, exactly where things come from, following things through every single step. Because to me, there's always somebody at every step. You know, my dad worked in a car factory, so every ball bearing was kind of interest to me when you see at that level. And then years later, I was at a Fiber Shed Wool Symposium in actually November of 2012, which seems so long ago. And there was a panel of sheep shearers, and they started talking about supply chain problems. So there were wool producers and small fiber flock folks in the audience who had trouble finding a shearer, which is, you know, a bottleneck, kind of a supply chain bottleneck. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. So you're telling me that, you know, is a lack of sheep shearers part of what's making it hard to get the kinds of wool and yarn I want to see? And it was, because I found out, you know, most shearers don't want to come out for a tiny or small flock, which might have mixed breeds, the kind of really interesting things that spinners and knitters care about. So it went from there. I'm probably talking too much, but that's how
not at all. No.
That's how it started. And then I went to shearing school. The first time I went was May of 2013 at the University of California, Hopland Shearing School for a week. And I went the two following years after that to keep getting better. But for the first 2 years, and this is the thing I always have to correct about my story, is that people say, oh, you quit your job and then became a sheep shearer. And I'm like, no, because I would never do that as a working class person. Like, you have to have healthcare, you know, these kind of like, no. So I had my normal day job in tech and sheared on the weekends largely and on my holidays for 2 years, basically. So from 2013 to 2015, I was building it up as a side gig. And then, you know, that spring of 2015 was it was getting really hard. So it was kind of the point where I was like, I think I might have a business here. Can I make it? And a dear friend of mine, Terry Shoemaker, kind of made me sit down and look at what I was making and look at, you know, what is your cost of living? How much of part-time shearing is paying for XYZ? Could you make the leap? How much money would you have to make up in the fall when shearing is slower with something else? Those kinds of very concrete, do you have your own business? But I tell people that because it's not glamorous and it's not fun to tell people, yeah, for 2 years, I worked 7 days a week.
So I did the same thing. I, again, like, you know, I opened up the shop and I consulted and I worked 7 days, more than 7 days a week. You have to work more than 7 days a week in order to start something new and still protect what, you know, because you can't not do an amazing job for the people that you were working for. And thankfully I was able to do that remotely. And so I could do some of that while I was here, but I'm closed on Mondays and Tuesdays specifically because those were my office hours where I had to be at the office at the e-commerce company that I was working for at the time. So yeah, it's really similar. And it took me about 1.5 years before I was like, okay, I can cut the cord. But still, it's still scary. It's still totally scary. And I listened to a podcast from about the fiber shed movement, and specifically about a company that makes wool beds. That was that interview. And at that stage, that was when I was like, okay, I knew that I wanted to try to perfect the perfect yarn, that I was dissatisfied with everything that was out there, and I was going to try to create something new. But at that stage, I was like, A, I am not going to participate in disposable fashion anymore. I will wear my things until they are threadbare. B, I will understand where everything comes from. And C, my yarn will be as local as I can humanly possibly make it. So we share that as part of the journey.
I really salute you because it's harder. And I think the big lesson I've learned is that I'm very naive generally, but I used to think it was just a matter of will. Like, oh, if a company would only just decide to do the right thing, they could do it and they could still make money. There's a lot of reasons that fast fashion is the way it is to keep things affordable. And what you have done, I have some of your yarn. You're super bulky. I love it so much. When I was like, now is the time when I actually have time to knit. But like that, making those commitments, and also especially with natural dyes at the scale that you have to work, and your yarn is like, is it a 10 ply? It's really smushy but smooth, but like that plus starting a shop must have been, those are kind of two life projects rolled into one. And I'm like, how did she pull this off? You know?
Same as you. I mean, you're like, okay, back to you, because so you talk about your journey in raw material, and honestly, it's like an adventure. Like, you can't put this down because it's like, oh my gosh, then what happened? So, but can you talk about the life of a sheep shearer a little bit, and you know, getting your butt kicked by a sheep, and what's it physically like?
It's, you know, that's still happening. So what is my life as a sheep shearer like, and what is it, you know, so I will talk a little bit about just in general how it works, because every shearer works differently, and it depends a lot on their geography and how much they shear and how much you live on the road, right? So for the past couple of years, until my grandmother passed in February, I was also doing elder caregiving since like July of 2017 to February of this year. So I didn't want to be away, and she had dementia. So it changed how much time I wanted to spend away. So I kind of adapted. I stopped sharing in farther places like Eastern Washington or Western Nevada. And I really started to stay closer to home, which has been fine. There's plenty of work around here. So what that means is that in general, for most of my jobs, they don't require an overnight trip away. Some of them do, and I like to get away. I actually like to sleep in my minivan and stay on somebody's farm. But for the most part, from January till about July, I shear all over the Bay Area and slightly beyond. So Napa County, Solano County, Castro Valley, up and down the coast, Carmel Valley, Half Moon Bay, all up and down that. There's a lot of other shearers in Sonoma and Mendocino. So I usually, if I get a job request where I know somebody has their own business, I will try to refer them to the shearer that's closer because it's cheaper for them. And then I hope I can build another, usually younger shearer's business, right? So that it's cheaper for the farmer. You don't have to drive as far, and they get more people in the same area. And then we're cutting down on carbon emissions, and everybody has a shearer in their backyard so they can get more sheep, and then we have more yarn, and it hopefully makes this nice thing. So I will get up, usually on whatever morning I'm shearing. I try to shear starting about 8 or 9, especially as it gets warmer in the morning. So the sheep are kept off food and water all night. That is because of their ruminant system and for their comfort. So a ruminant system weighs about 6 gallons when it's full. So when I flip the sheep over to shear its belly, that, if you think of 6 gallons of milk, like laying on your belly when you're laying on your back, it backs up and makes them feel like they can't breathe. So I ask about at least 12 hours. And that way I can get there in the morning when it's still fairly cool, shear them, and then they can eat right away in the morning like they normally would. And those days are either, every job, no matter how many exact hours, it's either a half day or a full day job. It's either about 4 hours all in, or it's about 8 hours all in. So, and I actually don't do too many double job days because it's hard to time it. But if I know for sure it's small enough, I'll be out midday. I can do somebody else in the evening on the way home. And then I'm usually home most nights now. Again, there are exceptions when I'm on the road, but that's generally how it works from January through July. And yeah, the sheep are, a lot of it's on the shearer. They do beat you up, but that's not their intention, right? They are prey animals. And for a sheep, if they're normally caught and grabbed, it's a very bad thing, right? It's usually a coyote, or in most cases, it's actually a dog that wasn't, that isn't controlled in our area. So they don't like being held. They don't like being flipped. They're not like dogs unless you raise them like pets. So our goal is to really just get through shearing as safely and quickly as possible so that they have to be uncomfortable and in awkward positions, as quickly as possible. I really liken this, sorry for your audience, I liken to going into the kind of doctor you don't want to go to. You're like, yeah, please just get through this as quickly as possible without hurting me, thanks.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
How long does it take to shear a sheep on average, would you say?
How long does it take to shear a sheep? For me, it depends completely on the weight of the animal.
Okay.
So 80 to 120 pound Shetland, minutes, 4 to 8, maybe, pretty fast. When I get a lot of these big meat sheep now, Hampshires and Suffolks, and they're 200 to 300 pounds.
Wow.
And then we have a whole different animal handling and flipping situation going on. So those take me, I don't think I've ever done one in less than 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So, and the nice thing with small numbers, which is what I'm mostly doing, because that's what's around me. Most people, these big sheep ranches in California, the way our land is divided, don't really exist anymore. So I'm doing a lot of fire control flocks that people have, maybe 4 sheep on an acre to help keep the weeds down and things like that. You don't have to go fast. You don't really have to rush. I spend every time more time setting up my gear and everything. Packing up and breaking down takes me longer than shearing most of the time. But most of my customers just want me to do a good job with the fiber, a nice clean shear, and don't cut the animals. That's it. Yeah.
and talk about like how, I think people don't really, so Tony's Welsh. We lived in Wales. Well, I lived in Wales for 20 years, and Tony obviously grew up there and emigrated here in 2008. I came home, having lived there for 20 years. It's the land of sheep.
Yeah.
So we were surrounded by sheep and sheep culture, but it's very similar to the United States in so much as the wool industry has nigh on disappeared, with the exception of a few odd mills. And then of course we've got like Shetland Islands, where there's still, 2 Jameson mills or more, and they're still, they're still thriving, but a lot of the wool gets imported or it gets thrown away. Much like I think here, which is a tragedy, deeply, deeply upsetting. But sheep are everywhere, and they're the sweetest. So they are sweet animals. A little, they're not the brightest.
No, but I will say the less domesticated ones are quite smart and wily. It's funny, I didn't realize we kind of had that connection. I spent a lot of time in Wales because my mom and my stepdad lived for about 15 years in Northwest England. Yeah. So we were hopping over to Wales to do walks, they say all the time, when they're like hiking up a mountain. And my mom lives in Shetland. She's on Bressay.
No way!
It's the island. And so, and they ended up there because I took her to Wool Week as a retirement surprise. So it's amazing because it really makes you so envious constantly of like the culture. Everybody knits. Like, it's not even special that you're a sheep shearer. You go there, everybody's like, yeah, everybody can shear their sheep. You're like, I found my people, like if you went to the doctor's office, they would have a scarf that everybody would knit on, just like pegged to the counter. And I'm like, it's so different.
Cotton school.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I am not from there. As we say, I grew up in an industrial area. But I think that's part of why I hope that I want more sheep around. Right. And I think some shearers are, until they know me a little better, they're like, why are you referring this job to me? Is it a bad job? I'm like, no, I don't know anything about this job. It's just in your area. But we want more sheep on the land. And especially as there's so much science, University of Berkeley, University of California, Cal, sorry. When you're not from this area, it's Cal. And from UC Davis are doing these field studies about what grazing animals do for, as I say in the book, carbon sequestration, bringing back native grasses, increasing the water holding capacity in the soil. That was a big surprise to me. And in our area, of course, fire reduction is huge. Sheep are very light on the land weight wise, if they're managed well compared to some heavier animals in like a steeper area, just like goats, they can go a lot of places. So I would love to see, if California started to look a little more like Wales and Shetland, would not be disappointed.
Me too. My secret fantasy is to have like a farm yarn shop mill here. Yeah. It'll probably never happen, but at least I've got the yarn shop and the yarn. So it's the start. But I'd love to have some sheep. So yeah. Okay, so I also was hoping that, is there anything else that you want to talk about your book? Everybody read this. It's amazing. And you'll learn. I can't
say anything better than that, so thank you.
It's educational, it's exciting, it's an adventure, it's fantastic. And you are also the president of the Northern California Fiber Shed Cooperative, which I have neglected to join. And I have to join it because I'm obsessed with it. And now I know the way in which I can join, which is because I'm using local product in order to create the formulas for my dyes. So I finally figured out, oh, I can be a producer that way, because actually my merino comes from North Carolina, because I wanted an 18 micron fiber, and that doesn't grow beautifully in California. And also I wanted to lower my carbon footprint by having my mill close by and my mill in a place where there wasn't water shortage. So those two things were the decision-making factors in terms of where I have my yarn made. But I really want yarn made in California, and there's a mill in Mendocino that I think is doing well and up and coming. So I got to figure that all out. Anyway, but tell me about the fiber shed, because a lot of people don't know what it is, or how they can become involved just as consumers.
Well, it's funny because it's an agriculture cooperative and I am not a farmer. So what am I doing as the volunteer president of an ag co-op? Really, it functions mostly as a marketing cooperative. So we work very hard to sell our members products who are using, regionally grown and produced materials, and most of whom on the farming side are participating in regenerative practices. So if they're a farmer, almost all of our members are, have had soil sampling or are doing things to literally regenerate the landscapes that their animals are on. And then artisans are in the similar spirit as you, trying their best, even though it's really hard and sometimes a lot more expensive to source, from their region, to the extent possible, right? And I'm always one of those people where it sounds so high and mighty sometimes. And I'm like, look, we just really gotta not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, though. So when you talk about North Carolina, the fact is, like, I was surprised there's merino in North Carolina, honestly. Really, I'm familiar with them mostly in Montana and the Dakotas. And there's just different things that grow well in different places, and everything can't grow the same place everywhere. It's like the right plant for the right place. Like, we need to think about our fiber that way too. But so we have 75 members or so right now. The ag co-ops region is basically from San Luis Obispo to the Oregon border, from the Pacific Ocean to Nevada. And we market their goods. So really, we are just, and the reason I'm there is because I just really want to increase farm income. So personally, I'm like a geographic wealth distributionist before everybody starts calling me a socialist or something. Like, I really want to I travel around to rural areas. There's a lot of inequity and injustice in the way we fund our school systems, in the way we tax things. People are living so differently that I now understand why people in certain areas feel like a state policy that might work for people in the Bay Area doesn't work in a rural area. So everything I can do to get money back into the hands of farmers is what we're doing. So we launched the online fiber shed marketplace, which is fibershedmarketplace.com. And it's literally like Etsy. Of course, I advise not building your own platform if you don't have to, but it's each person's own business who's a member, and they sell their own goods and they get their money, and we take a small commission to run the entire hosting, paying our accountant to cut checks to everybody, that whole thing. So we wanted to kind of like rising tide lift all boats, that when you come to that online marketplace, you might be looking for one thing, but you find, oh, there are all these other people doing things like, I came for yarn, but I bought natural dyes. We also did, prior to the pandemic, we were experimenting with, in-person pop-ups dedicated to the, little ones at like Green's restaurant in San Francisco. We had a booth at the Ferry Building during the holidays last year. We sold at Lambtown, where we had one booth for all of our members who were interested to sell goods in, because even booth fees at fiber festivals can be really costly for a very small yarn line. And we could pay for that as a cooperative, and everybody can sell. And then you only, we use a commission model right now, which isn't really making us any profit, but I feel like it's fair because you only pay the commission if you sell anything. So it costs you nothing to participate, but if you sell something, then, there's a small commission. During the pandemic now, that kind of derailed all of our plans for 2020. We had a whole bunch of great pop-ups at like, you know, some kind of fancy events at UC Berkeley and a couple things that we wanted to do, but we've had to adapt like everyone else, like you certainly have. And and so we did our first virtual pop-up just about a month ago or so. And I'm pretty happy to say that our sales, I looked at the sales in the marketplace from January to July 31st of last year and this year, and we've more than doubled our sales for our members, even during a pandemic. So I'm pretty proud of that because there's more money going back to farms than there was last year. And we're just going to keep trying to do that. So that's what we do. You know, we've talked about, can we make a cooperative product? Like, could we buy our members fiber and make a product? Haven't been able to make the financials work on that. Like the margins are just so tight, but we're always looking at ways to make more money for our members. That's the goal. Sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but.
Oh, and my goal in terms of joining, which I'm going to do, is to connect with various different other members to figure out ways in which I can actually genuinely produce local wool. And whatever it takes, whatever I need to learn in order to make that happen, it's really important to me. So it's definitely going to be the next thing I do. I have 2 lines of wool now, and one of which is all the sourcing comes from North Carolina, and I'm buying the bales, etc. And then I have another one which is using an established mill in Virginia. So I need to come home in terms of the process. So for the next thing that we're doing. So you wanted to ask.
Oh yeah. What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
I wanted to be a librarian because I really loved being in libraries.
Oh, me too.
I'm a reader. Yeah, I wanted to be a librarian, and that really hasn't changed. I still love libraries. I do. You know, I'm working on becoming certified to do book indexing right now as another sideline, and it's really hard and fun. So it's not totally gone.
Your love of books shows in your writing. Yeah. If you were stranded on a desert island and you had to eat the same meal over and over again, what would it be? In other words, what's your favorite meal?
This is hard because you don't want to wreck it, right? You know, like whatever that's going to be is going to ruin it for the future. Right. So this is probably a cheater answer. It has to be one item. There's, you know, my family's Polish. So there's a Polish plate, which always has like 1 kielbasa, some pierogi, some gułamki, which is stuffed cabbage, you know, mashed potatoes and sauerkraut. So that would be the thing because it would have variety. But if I have to pick one thing, it would probably be the stuffed cabbage, the gułamki.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Full of probiotics.
Right, yes. Me too. I was like, if we're talking about sustenance.
What was the last piece of music you listened to?
Led Zeppelin.
Oh, that's highly credible.
I listen to a lot of Led Zeppelin in the car. It kind of keeps me going. It definitely keeps me going during shearing, during working out.
Oh, cool.
I was checking out your website and looking at like your COVID practices for shearing the sheep. How has this changed things for you?
Oh my God, you guys, it was so hard. And I really am so grateful for the internet because the shearer community, we were all able to talk this through with each other. So, you know, my fear was that living where I live in the Bay Area, my fear was not that I would catch it, but that I would bring it to a farm, to my often elderly clients, many of whom are also immune compromised from surgeries or various illnesses, or to an entire rural community. Right? Like, what if I'm the person who comes in from a town of 300 to a town of 300 where they previously had no cases, and then I'm the person that does that? So what I did was delay, which was terrible in retrospect. I basically took a lot of work from March to kind of think through what I was going to do, see what we could learn about the virus, and move it into April, which is terrible for me because it's so much hotter.
Mm.
So I ended up working in a lot of 90 to 100 degree days that in March would not have been those days, but that's okay. At the time, you know, they thought it lived on surfaces a lot. So I was terrified. You probably read it, of like the ranch gates. So I was like, at the time, my protocol was just don't touch anything. Like, I'm going to touch things. Don't touch, like if I skirt, you know, the fleeces, I don't want you to touch them after I sheared them, because my sweat will be all over them. Like, leave them out in the sun for a couple days. This whole thing, like I was wiping down ranch gates and like every place I touched with my equipment. My customers were in masks and they were far away. And it was so sad because like normally I have so much help.
Mm.
So nobody could really touch, you know, flip the sheep for me. Nobody could move the sheep for me. So my days got hotter and a lot harder for the same amount of money, but you know, it's a pandemic, so we adjust. And then we learned more, it was aerosols, right? That was the main transmission thing. And so then I was not crew sharing at all, which made me sad. So I was not going to go on a tightly packed shearing floor with other shearers who had all come from different locations, who all have their own practices and tolerances for safety. And you can't really shear in a mask. It's really hard because it's very, very intense physical labor. So I just said no crew jobs. Made me sad because it's such a solo gig anyway, that is my favorite part of shearing, is to find a job with a bunch of other shearers and we get to hang out for 3 or 5 days. You know, if it was going to be me and another shearer, it was outside, far apart, like, I mean, in the open air with our stand set up far apart, but that didn't really happen much. So that, I wasn't going in anybody's house. So a lot of rest areas were closed. All the state parks were closed at the time. There were no bathrooms. Everything was in my minivan. So I had soap in a little jar. I had like wash water, everything you need for bathroom, basically like a little traveling house so that I could be completely self-contained. And other shearers have gone through the same thing. And we're so fortunate because if you look at the COVID rates among other agricultural workers, they are awful. So, you know, there's many places you work, some vineyards, not the ones that I work at now, but like many times, you know, there's not a place to wash your hands. There's not a place to go to the bathroom in the fields. They're forcing people to work, you know, some picking. You know, some shearers go work the crush for the grapes in the fall after shearing season. There's no way to not do it in close proximity because that's how the picking works. You need that many people kind of putting grapes and things. So, you know, we're very lucky we can work on our own, that we have that choice, but it's just been very hard.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So Led Zeppelin.
I'm really trying to have Robert plant hair in case you can.
Yeah. You do look like Robert Plant. The hair. You don't look like Robert. Anyway, moving on. Favorite color?
Olive green.
Oh. That's a good color.
And I recently achieved it with some fennel dye. I don't think I have it here. But I had it on my Instagram. I dyed with some fennel and I got the perfect olive green and I'm like, great, this is my favorite weed now.
I have a lot of green in my collection. It's very fun to make. So yeah. And what is your most annoying habit?
I think I repeat myself a lot when I'm talking as far as other people are concerned. But for me, I pick at my cuticles a lot when I'm nervous, especially in social situations. So I also have these like terrible bleeding, like, because I'm pretty shy and introverted, but I can pass, right? So yeah, but I'm like,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a good
and when did you learn to knit and or crochet? I know you knit. Do you crochet as well?
I don't know how, and I need to learn because there are all these patterns that I want to make, like Kira K's latest little shrug pattern.
That was out of my yarn.
I know, it looks so good in your yarn, and I was like, if there are things that can convince me to crochet, it's this. And it's not for any reason. I just never learned. My grandmother taught me to knit, when I was quite little, you know, in a summer. And then I kind of I did a little bit like in late high school, early college, I think, somewhere around there. And then I just dropped it, and I picked it up again in 2007. And so I took a class at Imagine It, and Brooke Sinnis of Sincere Sheep, I took her spinning class at Verb for Keeping Warm. So I do know how to spin a little bit. I'm not good, but I can.
Well,
yeah, I can finally get. Yeah, I can finally get the yarn to like to not just fly out of my hands and actually get. that's good. So yeah, I would say though, I probably more seriously started knitting in 2007. So 13 years. Wow.
Do you have a good kid-friendly joke?
I don't.
That is okay.
I look for one. I'm like, I hang out with sheep shearers, so.
I am so like, I like, as soon as COVID is over, as soon as we can have a gathering, I would absolutely, I would love to have like a book signing and to have you come to the shop and, I don't know, just talk about your journey. And
no, it would be great. I love your shop, and I honestly, I don't mean to send people to your shop if you're not open, but your yarn is so fabulous. Like, you have really terrific yarn. Really terrific yarn. I'm like, if you have not tried this yarn, you have to try this yarn, because I was so surprised. Like, I felt so dumb. Like, I went into your shop and I'm like, how did I know this wasn't
brand new?
In here to buy this amazing. And then when I saw the colors and you told me that they were naturally dyed, I mean, I've seen some fabulous natural dye colors, but with the dimension, you have something really special going on. And I don't know what the formula is. I know it's probably a secret, but I'm like, there's something really special about these natural dyes, because this is different. It's pretty amazing.
I'm brewing in my kitchen.
Yeah.
If you went into my garage, well, I don't know what people must think. If we open my garage and I've got vials of, like, you know, various different, what would you call it, maturation of colors, as, you know, just trying to get the perfect combo. But I don't do all the hand dyeing myself. I come up with the recipes and then I hand that over. So I can't take full credit by any stretch.
It's funny, I was thinking about this the other day, because when you're in this kind of community, I have a lot of people ask me like, oh, so do you share and spin and then knit all your clothes? I'm like, no. How on earth? Do you know how long that takes?
Stephany, thank you so much. And I'm so delighted. Thank you for doing this. You know, we've got a tiny little video blog, and I feel so honored that you took the time to spend with us this morning. And
the book is raw material.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was great. This is like the most socializing I've done in a while, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support of both the domestic fiber industry and my book. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank you. Bye, Stephany.
Happy shearing.
Oh, happy shearing.
She was
Wasn't
a great
she amazing?
guest. What an amazing lady. She was amazing. Okay. Let's go on to talk about products.
Oh yeah. So the first thing that, you know, this is the time where we like showcase some of the stuff that we have in the shop. We have something so incredibly special. I could wet myself with excitement.
Oh, yeah, don't wet yourself with excitement.
I know, I need to make sure I don't drop this.
That is from Pinecone Ceramics, our friend Patricia, who made these amazing mugs. Show the inside. Show the base.
Super glazed,
nice.
and then not. It's just amazing.
That's a perfect mug size for me as well.
Little tea mugs. And these will exclusively be available at the Royal Bee Yarn Company, and I'll also be putting them online. The first batch we put on Instagram, and actually they're all spoken for. So Patricia's in the process of making more. So as soon as they are finished, we'll get those up online, and we'll figure out a really safe way to ship them. so that if you don't live locally, you can still have a bee mug. Aren't they gorgeous?
Look at that.
I just think they're so beautiful. Patricia is
I'm
so
really into
clever.
mugs. I love mugs.
And yeah, so that's Pinecone Ceramics. Look her up online. She does all kinds of really fun stuff.
We interviewed her the other week.
We featured her, but it's worth mentioning again. And I'm so excited that she
makes all things.
She does. She makes all the things.
She'll even make the tea to go in it.
Yeah, she would. Yeah.
What else you got, Cal?
Well, I just got this in yesterday, and I'm kind of excited about it.
I remember lugging that box.
Yeah. So
you lugged it actually. I just watched.
This is. I did actually lug the box.
You can slap me anytime.
I think you did open the doors. Well, why don't you tell them about Artesia and you tell them about the fiber.
Well, I can tell you about this beautiful alpaca mohair, 20% nylon, but it's a beautiful, very soft, squishy, hand-dyed, and hanks may vary. Alternative, but just remember, alternate hanks every 2 rows while knitting.
Ooh, that was pretty good.
That's
yeah,
really
so you
important
alternate your, only if you want like the consistency, because these are hand dyed, and most hand dyed products
hand wash in cold water as well. I just remember. Okay. Oh, and if you're going to dry it, lay it flat. Also 8033. Oh, that's the back. Sorry. And so this is very squishy.
What I love about this is its affordability. So that's something that I always try. We have spendy yarns when you're just in the mood to totally treat yourself. We have, most of our yarns are non-superwash, they're natural fibers. We do carry some things such as this that have a little bit of nylon in it. But what's so wonderful about this is the price point for the yardage. It's like over 400 yards. I think it's like 475.
I don't know what it is, but I'm really pink appeals to me at the moment.
Really? That's good.
I've never been a pink person.
That's my favorite color.
Pink, which was the color which was for Regency gentlemen.
Oh. Yeah, the history of pink.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
I just said everything I know.
Oh, okay.
Apparently pink was during the Regency period in England or France, I'm not sure which.
Yeah.
Pink was a color, you know, was predominantly worn by men.
So what I love, you know, Barocco just never really fails to come up with a really decent, affordable yarn.
This one's a lovely little blue.
These are only $20 and you got like 400 and some odd. I don't have my glasses on, so I don't know what the yardage is.
It really I've stroked sheep before.
He's Welsh.
Kelly. But it just feels like a real sheep.
Except for there's no wool in it. So actually...
It feels like a real alpaca. Blown it. People thought I was an expert. And now...
That's really cute. That's my favorite. Oh. So anyway.
Sorry. Yeah, so that's alpaca. It's alpaca. It made it Italian alpaca.
And I don't know if it.
It feels like a sheep, though. feels like a sheep.
I love sheep. Sheep are just absolute. I mean, this whole we're all about the sheep today. Look, I even have sheep tattoo.
Oh man, I want to get one of those actually.
Yeah, I think that would look super cute.
Yeah,
that
next
would
to
look
my
cute.
shark.
Which one would you do? That one is.
This one. This is the one.
That one. Yeah. That's the one.
And this one here, which is kind of. Anyway, that's great product.
Yeah, it's a beautiful product, and it's really affordable. They're $20, and I still haven't gotten the yardage out because I can't see it. 475 yards. 475 yards.
That's a lot of yards.
It's a lot of yards, and it's fingering weight. It's fantastic. And so soft.
Of course, it had to be fingering weight. And it's very soft.
So soft.
So soft.
So soft.
So.
Oh, and this is
your
sweater recently made out of
your yarn.
Yarn. DK. Kind of feels like worsted though, because it's got a lot of. It is squishy.
You are very squishy.
I am
in general.
In general, I'm squishy. So yeah.
Kelly is squishy. Feel free to squish Kelly.
When we can again.
Yes. Well, yes. Yeah. Don't. Yeah.
Not now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the end of the show for today. Next week we'll be talking to an opera singer turned crafter.
Yeah. Yeah. Stitching the high notes.
Stitching the high notes.
Yeah. We're really looking forward to talking to her.
Yes.
We just finished.
We totally just told her.
Yeah. She's so lovely.
Okay, I gotta go home and do lots of planning for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And try and come down off this coffee high. Actually, I'm coming down off it now.
Are you? Bye, everybody. Bye. See you soon.
Happy Sunday.
Thanks for supporting us. Come to the shop. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.